The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So even though Donald Trump's administration has lost when it comes to adding a citizenship question to the 2020 census, they've given up that fight. They are still planning on making some changes to the citizenship test, which is the test given to those who want to be naturalized as U.S. citizens, but were not born in the United States. And this is a test that goes back to 1986. It does get sporadically revised. So it was last revised in 2008, 11 years ago. And a statement from the acting director, Ken Cuccinelli. Yes, Ken Cuccinelli is still in politics, and now he is involved in figuring out what are the questions on the citizenship test. He says that updating it and maintaining it and improving it so that it's relevant is something that we should continue doing. And this is the obvious question isn't this just like a proxy, a way to save face around losing on the citizenship question on the census? And the idea is, yes, it probably is. Right now, the way it works is that the exam asks applicants 10 randomly selected questions from a list of 100. So there's 100 questions that are like the master list. And each time the test is given, 10 questions are selected from that. And there's 3 general areas: American government, American history, and integrated civics, which includes things like geography, symbols, and holidays. And you need to get at least 6 out of those 10 questions correct in order to pass the test. The pass rate is about 90% for this new version of the test, which they say will be roughly in line with what it's been, and that's it, that we don't have to worry is essentially their message on this.
Yeah, and the citizenship test is notoriously hard, at least when it comes to, natural-born citizens taking it. They typically fail. And I was taking a look at some of the questions. One was name your U.S. representative. Sure, I can do that, you can do that, but how many people in the general audience or the general population can do that? Probably not many. Another one, who is the Speaker of the House? When was the Constitution written? I mean, these questions aren't easy to begin with. So I think that it's time for changes to be made to the citizenship test, but I highly doubt that Trump's changes are going to make the test more easy. I have to imagine that they're going to make it a lot more difficult to pass and become a United States citizen.
Not to mention, if I had to guess what types of changes they want to make, there are going to be changes. They threw in this line of that we want to make sure that it reflects what it means to be an American. The view of the current administration about what it means to be an American is a disgusting, toxic, xenophobic view. Like, the last people that should be tailoring a citizenship test on the basis of their understanding of what it means or should mean to be American is this administration, because they've demonstrated time and again, they have no respect for the historical pillars of what it means to be the United States of America and to be Americans.
Yeah, and actually, when I was reviewing the list of questions, I saw one that asked about if you have grievances with the American government, what can you kind of do to take them up on that? And you could respond with protesting or voting, and there's a number of ways you can respond. I'd have to imagine that that's going to be taken off of the list. Certainly, Republicans, when they're in power, Trump now, he's not going to want to make it so that people who are coming into the country are aware of their rights to protest and fight back against the government. I think it's going to be changed with something more like how can we celebrate America and the current president and those sorts of things that are more propagandistic.
It may be a little more subtle than that, but I think you're completely right. I mean, as I talked about on the regular show today, the new idea from Trump is if you're an immigrant, if you're a foreigner and you want to come to the U.S. because you don't like the way things are going in your country, you should stay there and fix them. If you're an American who doesn't like the way things are going in the United States, love it or leave it, you should just get out and go somewhere else. So there's no question that the last thing this administration does not want, the last thing they would want to encourage via the citizenship test is people coming from other countries and then working to change the United States, even though there's really nothing more American than that. That's sort of one of the main things that the United States has built on. We'll see ultimately what the changes are and what the impact is expected to be on the people that continue to take this test. There's a new bill in Oregon which will give students the ability to take a mental health day, and it will count as an excused absence, okay? The law will allow for excused school absences because of mental or behavioral health and is widely believed to be the first of its kind in the country at schools According to the Associated Press, it was signed by the governor, Kate Brown. Students will get up to 5 excused absences in a 3-month span for mental health reasons. Any additional ones will require a written excuse. Previously, only physical illness counted as an excused absence. The truth is that listen, I think that this is good, and I'm curious to hear from you, Pat, whether you think it's good. And partially it's good because we want to be destigmatizing mental health and emotional issues as not really issues. Like, we want to make sure people feel okay about the fact that emotional issues and psychological issues and mental health issues are real and they're not anything to be embarrassed about, and we want people to take care of themselves. That's all really good. The truth is that if you went to the doctor and it was for a mental health related reason, most doctors would still give you the same type of note that would make it an excused absence, even if you broke your ankle. That's kind of the reality. But I still think that this is important because it's really spelling it out and putting it out there.
Yeah, and if you need more than those 5 unexcused absences, you can always go to the doctor and get that note and get more. I think this overall is a good thing. The number of days is a bit shocking to me, though.
It is
5
to me too, yeah.
excused absences within a 3-month span. And I'm not sure if you can add on top of that being out for physical illness. And so that does start to get up there, especially when you consider that you don't want to miss too much school, that you can get behind with your studies and your grades. But of course, mental health is more important than all that other stuff. And I guess you do have to worry about people kind of not necessarily mooching off the system, but sort of taking advantage of this. Like, what if there's someone who is in perfectly good mental standing who just wants an extra day off or an extra 5 days off within that 3-month span? Certainly people are going to abuse the system and make that happen. But should we make it so that no one gets these excused absences or unexcused absences because of those people that are just trying to skate by? I don't think so.
Listen, I'll admit, I was one of these people in high school. I mean, I didn't like a lot of my high school classes. I didn't like the teachers. At towards the end of high school, I'd already gotten into college. I was already working. I was starting small businesses. I took every day and skip, so to speak. You were allowed a certain number of unexcused skips per class. I was maxed out. I mean, when I graduated, I was at the limit everywhere. And the vice principal, who I had an interesting relationship with, knew exactly what I was doing. And she said, "You're going to come in right below where you start needing to get notes, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, I am. That's exactly my plan." And I was one of these people. I mean, listen, I turned out okay. I was there. I did my work, but I took the maximum number of days possible. It's not the end of the world. There will always be free riders on these systems, and I was one of them, and everything's fine.
Yeah, I remember by my senior year in high school, we didn't even pretend as if we were taking absences because of illness or injury or whatever. We would literally just be like, "Yeah, I need a personal day," and the teachers would sort of understand. That was very risky of you to take all of your absences, though, because what if something serious actually did come up? Then you would have been totally screwed. You'd have to go get a note or something like that.
I would have, yeah, but I timed it okay, where it was like I still had a day in every class, even with only like a week to go. And then, I was able to do senior skip day. But if I had needed the day on a different day, I could have done it and got, who knows? Listen, it worked out fine, needless to say.
Yeah, and if you're missing all that school, you're likely to start falling behind a little bit on the coursework. Your grades could slip a little bit. But if you're a senior in high school and you've already gotten into college, you don't tend to care so much about that stuff because you feel like you're already safe and ready to go.
Yeah, I was hard to motivate at that point in time for sure. Senator Elizabeth Warren's biography on her official presidential campaign Twitter page has something new, which is her gender pronouns. Earlier this month, she added she/hers to her official campaign account. Julian Castro has done the same thing. Bill de Blasio has done the same thing. And this could be seen as either completely irrelevant and really nothing, or it could be seen as a major step forward in the inclusion of the preferred gender pronouns of presidential candidates and not a small feat in the eyes of LGBTQ advocates. I think that it's interesting from a sociological and cultural perspective that they decided to do this. A lot of comments online are saying that this is merely pandering. In a sense, isn't everything pandering when you're running a political campaign? Like, I don't find this to be any more pandering than anything else in particular. For me, there's just broader, interesting questions about the future of this movement, so to speak, that I find interesting, but I don't find it to be particularly pandering.
Well, I think pandering is appealing to voters, but it just has a negative twist on it. Like maybe you're not being genuine or sincere.
Sure.
That's all that word is to me. I think I agree with this move. I just hope that a big issue isn't necessarily made out of it, because that's the sort of thing that the other side can use as ammunition and try to make it seem as though the left is made up entirely of social justice warriors who want to tear apart the fabric of the country.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of reminds me of even now with the Trump administration talking about how they want to make sure that plastic straws are protected, as if the left is out there making sure that the signature issues of their campaign are banning plastic straws, or making it so that everyone has to include their sort of pronouns whenever they have a social media website or on their campaign website. And that's really not what the left is. And I'm just worried that Republicans are going to sort of use that against us in this way.
I think you're completely right from a strategic point of view. And listen, I don't even know that I want to get into this now, but I'm thinking about doing a segment later this week or next week about how there are some issues that I tend to stay away from because I'm afraid that the left will absolutely destroy me if I just sort of lay out what I think, which I think in most cases is pretty nuanced and reasonable. And the pronoun and gendering of children thing is one of those issues. And not to get into it in detail now, I am completely in favor of trans rights. I'm completely in favor of people using whatever bathroom they want. I don't care. We should have European style bathrooms where it's just, there's like a common sink area and then it's just stalls, and whoever wants to go into whichever stall, just go into the stall. I don't care. I'm against any kind of discrimination against trans people. I'm against being allowed to fire people on the basis of their gender or sexual orientation or gender status. I've made it very, very clear. The one thing I have a question about is that there are some parts of the country, and I'm very familiar with some of them, where I live in Boston is a lot like this. Where I grew up in Western Massachusetts is a lot like this, where I'm worried that there may be a little too much non-gendering being pushed on kids in a way that doesn't seem sensible. And I don't know what the impact is going to be long-term on society. And what I mean by that is, I know many non-gender binary parents who are going really far to make sure no one refers to their baby as him or her, that they just leave gender completely out of it, that they are choosing all toys and all clothing that does not, that they don't even want the kid to know their gender for a while. I don't even know what the end game is. And my reaction to that is, listen, the gender, issues of gender, the type that the parents may have experienced statistically are very, very rare. So the idea that you're going to fix or prevent a problem for your kid by going out of your way in this way to do these things is extraordinarily low. And the truth is that if the kid lives in society, if they were born with male genitalia and you allow people to refer to them as he, and you dress them in a way that is, it doesn't have to be cartoonishly masculine or feminine, but you don't go out of your way to dress a boy in pink, for example, just to create whatever sort of dynamic you want. The kid lives in society. The kid is going to realize very quickly what are traditional male or female gender roles, and they will identify if they feel like they don't fit into those or they don't look like those. Like, that's the only thing I have a problem with. And I'll be honest, I'm saying it on the bonus show. I think if I say this on the regular show, even with all of the disclaimers I gave up front about all of the things I do believe, I get destroyed by an element of the left.
What do you think about the argument that about 99.7 something like that percent of people are cisgendered? So it doesn't make sense for that 99.7% of people to go out of their way to mention what their pronouns are, to have everything be gender neutral, just to appeal to that 0.3% of the population. Like some portion of my mind buys into that, but I also view that as kind of a harsh reality, like a harsh thing to argue. And I don't know if I'd necessarily want to make that something that I'm standing for.
No, yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. The reason I don't jump behind that notion uniquely is that if you apply that to lots of other things, like, listen, the majority of the population is X. Therefore, anyone who is an X group shouldn't even worry about accommodating or being sensitive to people who don't fall under that. Like, that becomes problematic to me when applied more broadly. But I will say, I don't feel any need or that it would be useful in any way for me to ever clarify I am he, him, right? Like, I mean, I think that the percentage of people who might be unsure about when I say my name is David, and based on how I dress and based on how I exist in society, if someone thinks I might be someone who presents as female or wants to be referred to as she, her, and if they make that mistake, it doesn't bother me. That's totally fine. I'll say, I would genuinely say to them, "Oh no, I'm actually male, and I used he, him pronouns." But I can't think of any circumstances in which I would feel compelled to start saying or clarifying that I go by he, him in society. Period.
Well, yeah, like if I was referred to as she or her, I'd probably be confused at first, but I wouldn't take any sort of offense to it. I would probably just correct the person and move on.
Yep.
But I think what people in the LGBT community are arguing is that everyone should sort of be up and out front with it. That way, no one feels like they're being offended. No one feels like they're being misgendered. Whereas with us, if it happens, we're not going to care so much. With someone who has transitioned or is like thinking about transitioning, it's going to be a lot harder for them, a lot tougher for them if they are misgendered. So maybe everyone should have to sort of, put themselves in that sort of position, kind of get that whole well-rounded perspective and understand that some people are going to be bothered by that.
I think that that's completely reasonable and that we should be sensitive to that and understand that. I just don't know of any reason why, if there is a group of people that in order to communicate something about themselves, either because they have transitioned or because they are non-gender binary or whatever, if they feel that they are going to be better off in society by wearing a pin that says she, her, for example, and I've been to many places where that's the case, and that's great. It tells me some additional information about people. I just don't think that that means that there would be any reason to impose that on everybody. And I feel like we're now straw manning. I've not even heard anyone suggest that. So I want to be clear. I'm not even trying to straw man. That's kind of where I am on it, in full respect to the movement and to rights and equality in every other way.
I really just wish we could start the whole English language over and not have gendered pronouns. Like, why do we even have to divide that up? Why do we have to have him and her and he and she? Can we just have one that refers to every single person? It's hard to, now that we've been using this language for so long, transition that over, especially in the course of just decades or a few generations. But ideally, if we could go back and start from scratch, I think we'd be able to avoid a lot of these problems.
There's no question about it. And Spanish is dealing with this a lot now, because Spanish, including Spanish is gendered language in a much bigger way than English. And this is something that the Spanish language academic communities are now dealing with. And I'm interested to see what they sort of come up with. So listen, if what I've said is extraordinarily offensive to anyone, let me know. I mean, again, I admit I'm afraid to talk about this stuff on the regular show because I know that there will be huge backlash from a lot of people, even though I am acting in good faith and for the best interests of the of every member of our society. So anyway, let me know. New show, new bonus show tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.